Hello and welcome to Driver's Therapy. Today is an exciting day because we just don't have an awesome Camaro in front of us, but we have my friend Jim, and I'm really excited because this is long overdue. I get to hear his awesome car all the time. It rumbles, it's just, oh, I love it. And I've been on a ride, and he leaves his mark, if you know what I mean. But yes, Jim, so tell us about this Camaro. What year is your Camaro?
This is a 1968 Camaro RS SS. When the car was made back in the era starting in 67, they had different trim levels. You could get the RS, which came with the hideaway headlights, and it had different other amenities that came with that package, just like nowadays when you get a 401A or a 301A in different vehicles. But they had the RS package and an SS package. This particular car came as equipped with both packages intertwined together. So it had like maybe the bucket seats, SS made, I don't know specifically, you know, Camaros even came with bench seats, but so anyway, it's a combination of the RS and the SS, which is like, you know, it's like, give me everything on the menu, I want this and that. You know, factory front disc brakes, that type of thing.
And that's so cool because when you mentioned that, I went back and Googled it and I was like, wow, because, you know, I've only known Camaros certain generations and I've only known like RS and SS, so that's really neat. So you got this in 15 years ago, and that's a long time in my opinion. Just right now I've owned my car for 5 years, but thinking 15 years, that's a long relationship with the car. And when you picked up your Camaro, did it look like this or?
Basically, it did. This is the paint that it had when I got it. It's been in the garage the entire time. It's always been heated, cooled, never seen sun, rain, or snow. But the entire drivetrain needed freshen up. The car looked good, but there was like an issue here, an oil leak there. Blew out the rear end once.
I wonder how.
I was having some fun and it went away. So, you know, it's a process. Some people can call them a money pit, but you know what? There's a lot of other places where people spend money and never see it back. I'm not saying this is an investment. This has been something that I've enjoyed.
And you've always wanted, right?
I've always wanted, and it's something that, like I said, I can share it and people can appreciate like yourself. You can say, oh, wow.
Now, I've been to a car show with Jim, and I mean, everyone from your teenager all the way, you know, to your older generation, they just fall in love with it. I mean, I could see the teenager, if he shows up in high school in this, that guy is going to have more prom dates than he could handle. Everyone seems to love the car wherever you go, and you've gotten to meet a lot of people because of it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It seems like everybody can touch it touches a nerve of somebody else. An older person can say, hey, listen, when I was in high school, my uncle had one. Or I knew a friend of mine, as soon as he came back from Vietnam, he got one. And now with the younger kids too, they're like, oh wow, those are cool cars. Tell me a little bit about it. And so they can relate too.
And to me, when I see this is the classic example of what a muscle car is. I mean, like, and today, you know, we have Hellcats and ZL1s and all these fancy things, which are cool cars. But when I see a car with this, with the body lines and the wheels, and of course, the most important ingredients, the sound. I mean, it is just a beautiful part of automotive history, and also it's just really neat to see them on the road, especially in this condition. And I know that this isn't your first muscle car, right? And I'm gonna use quotes because you know, it's a big class of cars or genre of cars. But is this your first muscle car?
This is my first and only muscle car. I had an 80 Camaro, but that was almost at the bottom, it was in the declining era of performance. This was just like almost to the pinnacle, because 1970 was like the highest year. After that, the government started mandating requirements, and they started slowing them down safety-wise as far as horsepower, emission control, and that type of thing. So by the time I got my 80, it was all look and it was all show and no go.
Yeah, I totally understand. I bought a 1980s Corvette, and the body is just beautiful. You know, it was a C3 Corvette, but at that time, like you were saying, there was emissions problems. And that 350 only produced a little over 200 horsepower. And that was a little shocking for the time. I was like, this car looks beautiful, looks fast. But at the time, like you were saying, the emissions and all that, where they were kind of detuning the cars in that era.
Exactly. Well, they also changed the rating power. So like that 80 Camaro was like your Corvette. It was all it could do to push 200 horsepower. This car here is pushing over 500 horsepower, but 570 foot-pounds of torque.
But now, was that how it came in 1968?
No.
I mean, otherwise, I want to jump in a time machine. And so, what did this car come with originally? What was it originally set up?
This was a big block 4-speed car, 396 4-speed car.
Okay. And I mean, just I have to pause. Just the idea of a big block in a manual. Oh. So it was a big, what was it, 396 with the 4-speed.
Right. And and you know, stick shifts are now across the board becoming a thing of the past. So save the manual.
And right now, what engine does it have?
It's a Ramjet 502 fuel injected.
And that thing, I know I keep saying how it sounds, but it's like wah, 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 wah. So a Ramjet 502, what is the power configuration on something like that?
502.
502, okay. So the engine is called 502 and it's 502. And the torque?
570.
570, that is nice.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be on its power band all the time to get maximum horsepower. It is quite at home at 25 to 3,000 RPM, and then it peaks at somewhere 5 to 5,500. It makes it easy to drive where you want to be sane and sedate. You can shift first to second, second to fourth, first to third, and it doesn't miss a lick. It doesn't feel like, oh, it chugs to get going.
And when you say shifting, are you talking about that original 4-speed?
No, this is a 5-speed.
5-speed.
Tremec TKO 600 5-speed.
Nice, nice.
Along with all the other things that have been that have evolved through the years, is the rear end's a Mosier 12-bolt.
Okay.
Because it came with an older rear end that was probably seen better days and probably seen its share of abuse, and it let go whenever I pushed it to the limit.
So the 12-bolt, that just sounds pretty intense.
That was GM's performance rear end.
Okay.
There's a lot of various different ways that people go nowadays, but this is what I chose because it stays closer to the OEM status of what came with the car.
Okay, Jim, so talking about a 1968 car, what is the driving experience in the interior? Like these cars, they don't even have like the shoulder belts. They just come with just like roller coaster belts. That's what I call them.
This car just has lap belts. And in that year, they had an option for a shoulder belt, shoulder seat belt that came across. But those are far and few between, and they were taken out a lot of times because they kept falling out, and people at that time weren't as in tune to safety. One thing I can say about the driving and safety aspect of the car, you know, you can get in almost any car now and be going down the road. You don't feel the bump, you don't hear the wind, and you look down and I'm doing 85. This is a visceral feel. I mean, you feel, this car rides decent, but you have to be driving it. You have to be aware of what you're doing all the time. You can't, you can't text and drive this thing at all, because I mean, it's not forgiving. We're talking over 50-year technology.
And is it leaf springs? I see. Is that a traction bar down there? I can even see it from here. But what was the suspension configuration on this?
It's been refreshed, but I mean the The front suspension is A-arms with coil springs.
Okay.
The rear is leaf springs with shocks.
Okay, I mean, that's definitely not a bad suspension setup, especially for that era. But you could definitely tell the difference when you step into a newer vehicle, just the configuration of how things have developed over time.
Sure.
That's awesome. I mean, so when you light up them tires, though, that big bar makes sure that you don't do any hopping, or what does that bar actually do for the viewers who might not know what that does?
Old school days used to be called traction bars.
Okay.
It eliminates wheel hop. The current term is torque control. And what it does is it brings pressure or torque to the axle to keep the rear wheels planted on the ground, so they're not bouncing up and down and hopping down and not getting traction of the wheel. But
that's awesome. Well, Jim, I have a very special question for you. What is your most memorable day with your car?
You know, that's a real tough question. I can't say that I can pick one out. I mean, there's a lot of them that come to mind, but not one that just says, "Oh, I remember that one day," or a lot of different.
A lot of.
Yeah. Oh, I'll give you one example. It was like, I remember, like I said, growing up in the early '70s and seeing friends of mine drive their cars, and I'd see every once in a while I'd get an opportunity to get in their car and go for a ride and see how they drove it. Well, when I first got this, within the first week, I'll say week, I took it out for a drive like that too, and I was I don't know if you're familiar with the term speed shifting. In other words, that's where you keep your foot on the floor, and when you shift, all you're doing is stabbing the clutch and grabbing the gear shift and not letting off on the gas at all.
Oh, wow.
And that puts a tremendous force on the entire drivetrain. And I only did that a couple times because the rear end that came with the car at that time said no more.
But you remember that day you were doing it, you were just...
Because yes, I ended up coming back and seeing that some welds had broke on the purchase from the...
But you know, I think we all learned something. This is a hot rod, but at the end of the day, Jim is a hot rodder. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us about your awesome 1968 Camaro. That sounds beautiful. And before further ado, we gotta let you guys hear it. And again, Jim, thank you for being on the channel. Really appreciate it and sharing your experience.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.